theme for the month of June is the basics. The basics. We're going to spend this month exploring our spiritual understanding as it relates to New Thought, Ancient Wisdom, metaphysical way of life, to talk about those things that we gather each week and profess that we embrace and believe and live from. We're going to talk about next week who's in charge. God. Just give you a heads up on that. In case you thought I would. We're going to actually, on the third Sunday, the slides, a lot of the things that we say, like our purpose statement, our affirmation and everything, what do we really mean when we say our purpose to create a spiritual community which recognizes there is one presence, one power in the universe? What does that mean? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about our spiritual resources, those things that we can practice. We're going to talk about one of the things that we say that is difficult for a lot of people, me included. I see God in you. What it means to truly see, recognize, and behold the divine in people who don't even know it for themselves.
Teach.
And who act in ways that are so unlike that. And there are other things that we will explore during this month. But today, I have a question for you. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? And so very often, when a person is confronted by that question, it's usually a person that somehow has challenged you to consider your particular behavior. It may be that they don't agree with that. Somehow they have an issue or they have a problem, so they will come out and ask you that question. Who do you think you are? But this morning, I want to take that question and turn it on its head. And rather than talking from the perspective of who do you think you are, from talking about how can you have the audacity, the unmitigated gall to be this or that, to say to you that who you think you are is important. Self-image. Say that with me. Self-image. Self-image is important. Who you think you are is important. In we call it Hebrew Scriptures or the Old Testament, there's a story in Numbers, the book of Numbers, where the Israelites were just on the threshold of the land of promise. And they were getting ready to make their trek over into the promised land, but they needed to see what it was like over there. So they gathered together 12 men, each from one of the tribes of Israel. They sent them over as spies to scout out the land and see what the land was going to be like. They got over there and they saw some things and they came back. And as they got back, they gathered and they reported. 10 of them had the majority report. 2 had the minority report. The minority report, Joshua and Caleb said, we can take the land. Let's go. But the majority report, the 10, said this. We got over there, and yes, it is a land that is flowing with milk and honey. But there's some big dudes over there. The sons of Anak, giants. And here's the key verse. Self-image. They said, we see ourselves as grasshoppers. And so we were in their sight. Notice they didn't say they see us as grasshoppers. They said we see ourselves as grasshoppers. And so we were in their sight. Self-image. How you see yourself determines how you interact with the world. How you see yourself interacts with the world. Those 10 said we see ourselves as grasshoppers. And if you think about it, our self-image and how we go about living life, going through this, as we sung earlier, life is a journey, going through this journey called life. How we see ourselves determines how we interact in life, and also how others act toward us. When I was in rehab, and I shared this, I was for 2 weeks in a wheelchair. Could barely walk, only a few steps each day. Had to relearn how to walk. But when I first got to rehab, I slid in on the weekend. So it was nice and easy on the weekend. Sat up in my bed. When I could, I'd get in my wheelchair and they wheeled me down to the dining hall and I'd move around and everything was fine. People were nice to me. But Monday morning came. I was lying in bed when at 6 o'clock the lights flicked on. And there was a woman there. We developed a great relationship, but I called her the drill sergeant. And she said, Mr. Gilmore, it's time to get up. You've got a busy day ahead of you. And before I could do anything, she had pulled the sheets down. She had a basin of water. And she washed me. She said, you know, I can wash you in bed, or you can make your way over to the sink. She washed me that day. I went through physical therapy, occupational therapy, did all of the things, moving around. Tuesday morning came. When she walked in the room, I was already sitting at the sink, brushing my teeth. I had washed my face because when she came in that day, she didn't just wash me, she scrubbed me. And I was determined. I was not going to get scrubbed like that again. But more importantly, she sparked something in me that I started to carry with me through the rest of that experience and subsequent experiences as I continue to recover. And that is, I realized that I had to stop defining myself, self-image, as sick. Yes, I had open heart surgery. Yes, I had a perforated bowel that had to be repaired that I have to wear a ileostomy for. Yes, I had constant reminders. I had experiences where I passed out. Judy could tell you, she came in one day to the house and I greeted her at the door, and 2-3 minutes later I was on the floor and she and Emma were trying to get me up. But through that, I started to realize as long as you define and see yourself as sick, you will remain so. And so I started to say to people, my default, when I get up in the morning, instead of not feeling good, my default is to feel good. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that, every morning I woke up and I was feeling good, but I told myself that. I feel good. When people would ask me, and part of this, when you want to know what your self-image is, start to listen to the stories that you tell about yourself. And a part of that was in the beginning, I was continuing to tell the story about what happened to me. So I was identifying with sick. And she's laughing, but my wife kept saying to me, do you want to keep telling that story? Is that what you want to keep remembering? And the thing of it is that there is a kind of strange reward in that. Because when you're sick, people, or some people, cater to you. You know, I had a cane, walking stick that I would use after I got out, and even when I didn't have to, I still would take it with me because I got doors open for me. I'd go in a place, I'd get a senior discount, I'll even ask. So letting go of that story wasn't as easy as saying, I'm letting go of this story. But if you want to know what your self-image is, you start examining the stories that you tell. And not only that you tell other people, but the stories that you tell yourself. Because they're most important. And the reason why self-image and all of this is important, because in a metaphysical understanding, there are three pillars. The first is self-awareness. Self-awareness. That when we can see and be aware of ourselves in relationship to the world, that's where it is. And self-image is a key there. The second pillar of metaphysics is when we have an intention, when we set our intention. And the third is detachment, when we remove ourselves from the outcome and we learn how to trust the universe. But self-awareness is so important because the stories that we tell ourselves shape our reality. They shape what happens to us. They shape how other people respond to us. If you are feeling down about yourself, what you will tend to attract are other people who join that party and put you down. If you are mad about things, mad with the world, a part of the thing is that can't nobody make you mad unless there wasn't already some mad in you.
Teach.
So how we see ourselves, how we interact with the world is important. But the key element in all of this is that God can do no more for you than God can do through you. So people don't like that. God can do no more for you than God can do through you. Because if you think yourself to be unworthy, and God, the universe, spirit, source, whatever it is that we choose to call it, is showering you with all kinds of reasons to understand just who you are and how special you are, but you are down on yourself, it becomes very difficult. Think about it for a moment. Have you ever tried to love somebody who doesn't love themselves? You can tell them all kinds of things. You can compliment them. You can try to do what you can to lift them up. You can say things. You can all kinds of patience expressed towards them. All of those things. But if they don't love themselves, it's very difficult to accept your love. And on a much grander scale, as God tries to love us and express loving toward us. If we feel ourselves, if our self-image is that I'm not worthy, what they told me when I was growing up, what people said to me, what they did to me. Him and I were talking about this on the way over this morning, what a teacher said to us in the 2nd or 3rd grade, or what a parent or another family member said to us. If we're still carrying those things, then it becomes very difficult. Very difficult for us to move and improve our self-image. And self-image is the key. There's a book, Psycho-Cybernetics, that TC and I have to find this book, by Maxwell Maltz. Maxwell Maltz was a plastic surgeon. And he had patients who would come to him. They needed something done for them in terms of plastic surgery. He would perform the plastic surgery on them. He noticed, though, would think that the person needed a scar fixed, a nose fixed, or something else, they would be happy after that. But there were some people who, rather than being happy, were upset. They might have said, well, you know, he did the work, but the scar's still there, although everybody else told him it wasn't there, and the person was in the mirror. The scar was no longer there, but they carried it around up here. There were other people, he said, who came to him that were beautiful, handsome, had everything perfect, but yet they saw something wrong with themselves and almost demanded that he fix something that, in his opinion, and in the opinion of many other people, was already perfect. Because their self-image was not where it needed to be. So I know you're saying, that sounds great. But how do I change my self-image if it's not what I want it to be? How do I get into that mood? First thing is to go back to those conversations that you have with yourself and those stories that you tell, and begin to change them. Change them into something positive and powerful. Change them into something that affirms and lifts you up every day. Even if in the beginning you don't believe them. Because there will be times that you will not believe them, because that old conditioning, those old tapes, that old programming will pop up in the face. And as soon as you think, I got this, I'm changing, something or someone or that voice in your head will pop up and say, you ain't all that. Who do you think you are? So we have to continue to tell. So I've shared this story. I continue to share this story. And I know y'all think, well, he's been away for a while. He came back telling the same story. But at one of the worst periods in my life, I read a book by Zig Ziglar, See You at the Top. And in there he had a suggestion. It seemed, I admit, it seemed corny, it seemed hokey, but I was so low in my life at that point. I was desperate to try anything. And particularly as a pastor of a church where I had to get up on Sunday morning and stand before the congregation and tell them to have hope, and I had none. And I felt like a fraud and a phony. An index card. Write 10 positive things about yourself. I got to 5. Came up with a few more. The last 2 I just kind of flushed them. I was at that point. I couldn't even find 10 positive things about myself to write down. But I got that index card. taped it to my bathroom mirror. You know, you might have other people in the house and you might not want to let them know what you're doing. But I was at a situation where I was living by myself. I took that index card, taped it to the bathroom mirror. Every morning, every night, every time I went in the bathroom, I stood in that mirror. I said those 10 things that were on that card as I would look myself in the eye. I got to a certain point where I didn't even need the card anymore because I memorized the 10 things that were on that list. It didn't happen overnight. I didn't even notice it. But at a certain point, there was a shift. And other people started saying to me, "You seem happy. What are you doing for yourself?" I found myself being in settings where heretofore I would sit back and be quiet, speaking up, standing up for things, expressing myself. I found myself no longer being willing to let people walk over me. I continued to use that index card and those affirmations on there, continued to say those things. At that time, I had put on a tremendous amount of weight. I had bad habits. I dropped the weight. I let go of those habits. I mean, you know, somebody who would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and fry chicken wings, that's kind of But I stopped those things. Just something simple, card. And the last number 10 on the card said, "I'm God's child. I'm created by God. I'm God's child." And even way back then, when I was taking a more traditional route, there was something that resonated in me, that I'm God's child. And I started following up with something that I had read when I was a child. It was a poster that said, you know, "You're God's child, but God didn't make no junk." And I kept allowing that to resonate with me. I'm God's child, and things happen. And that's when I found myself opening up to God, to Spirit, to Source, to the expression of the universe. And I began to understand God can do no more for you than God can do through you. When we open ourselves to this loving presence, and the thing of it is that you don't have to go nowhere. You ain't got to buy anybody's DVD, the retreat, or anything to be open and available to the loving presence that is who you are, that expresses. When the world wants to tell you you're nothing, you just say, "I'm somebody." When the world wants to say you're untalented, you can say, "I got talents and resources you don't even know about." When it wants to make you feel like that you have to hang your head down because you don't have the abundance and the resources that other people seem to have, you don't understand. I've got stuff that's here that ain't even manifested yet. When you begin to hear people say, "Well, you ain't going to be nothing because your daddy wasn't nothing, your mama wasn't nothing," all those things, you say, "Well, that might have been the chain in my family, the legacy in my family," but it stops here. Because I am something. I'm going to be something. I already am something. When people say and do whatever else, when you stand in your truth, and you know that you know that you are an expression of God, an emanation of the source that created the world, that created the universe, and that created you. And the thing of it is that wherever you go, you take that source with you. We ain't got to call God from somewhere else and hope that, oh, please, God, I hope you'll come by, stop by today or whatever. No, it's already here. It's already in you. And it's in me. So, who do you think you are? God's child. Something awesome. Something powerful. Something perfect. Something whole and complete. I see you more than just people sitting here in this space. I see light. Divine light. You already got it. And so it is.
So it is.
And you're wondering, well, what's going to happen to Open Heart? So, we made the decision that Open Heart was going to be. So let's all stand and welcome John and give ourselves. And each one of us, as we look at each other and we say, I see God in you, I see God in all of us, as we today welcome our spiritual leader. Thank you.
As we come to our time of conscious giving,